Hello, everybody. Welcome. Bienvenido. So grateful to all of the living beings and the more than merely living beings who've been my mentors and teachers and caretakers throughout my life. Just want to take a moment to honor and acknowledge them. I'm reading Hannah Arendt, The Life of the Mind. It's very provocative so far. There's much of the beginning of this book that seems to have a lot to do with topics that fascinated Owen Barfield in his work Saving the Appearances, which I strongly recommend. Brilliant work. I happen to be fascinated with the topic of the difficult to find the right word here, because the word evolution is scientifically heavy with, the baggage of Darwinism and pseudo-Darwinism and neo-Darwinism and epigenetics. Who is the man? Come on, hippocampus, let's go. Who proposed epigenetic features and was roundly rejected. Now Lamarck, I think. Now we, most ridiculous word, research has revealed that there are many epigenetic factors, but the topic that fascinates me is the developmental history of not just so much consciousness, although that's sort of maybe the root, but cognition in humans. And this is an extremely diverse topic. One thing that I think very few people understand is that the entire history of this world and the before of this world and the formation of the sun and the origins of life here and the entire history of our species, this is held inside each one of us in a way that we don't really have language about. We hear noises like the Akashic records and things like this. What I want to make clear is that within each being, nothing is missing. It is as if the universe has reproduced her entire spirit, heart, history, future, origins, relations with form, dreaming, as a being. This raven, that octopus, this spider, that mouse, this giraffe, this elephant, this cow, this pig, this cornfield. So I found very few books about the history of consciousness. I could name them, count them on one hand. The first I ever encountered, though every book is in a way this kind of book, much like I said, about the beings. Ravens are escorting me because they know I have these high protein treats that they very much enjoy. And I enjoy sharing them with them. I met some old friends where I learned Wu style Tai Chi with Guilain Talliender and Paul Taylor, who were taught by a man whose nickname was Hamlet from Guangzhou in China. And where I learned, there's a woman doing Tai Chi right here. So where I learned the Wu style, Wu 108, I have some friends who are Stellar's Jays, and I taught the male long ago, years ago. Well, taught is the wrong word. I enticed the male. The females are very unlikely to do this. There are probably exceptions where the situation is so calm that the females are bolder, but not around here. So I taught the male to take peanuts from atop my head, and it's been a very long time, so he was pretty nervous. It took him on his sixth attempt, he got the peanut from atop my beanie. You know me, I birdwalk, ha ha. But yes, the evolution of consciousness. So the first book that I ever encountered was probably almost certainly, and my God, did it blow my mind. I mean, I'm an aficionado of books and the written word, and by this I mean writing on paper. I don't mean reading things on screens. These are not the same behavior at all. This is exactly the kind of thing that modernity is crucifying our memory, interiority, relationships with ourselves, nature, and others with. Right? They keep producing convenient, technological homogenizations of experience. I was reading, I think it's Georgi Sandor's book on piano, and he said, you can certainly tell the difference between, I think he said, Rachmaninoff, and I can't remember the other pianist he named, when you're there. And he said something very profound. You might even be able to tell the difference on an incredibly homogenized recording. And he was clearly bemoaning the loss of complexity, intimacy, immediacy, the soma, the visceral somatic experience of being in music, as opposed to hearing a recording. And I just want to make very clear that reading a book, a physical book, is what you want. Yeah. Yes, there's convenience in the other form, reading things on screens. It's bad for us. It's bad for our minds. It's missing all kinds of dimensions of participatory intimacy, haptic intimacy with our hands, where in the book we are physically. We can tell where things are. Are they on the right or the left? All of these things, yes, missing. It's very tragic and poisonous, in my view. More bird walking. So, the first book I encountered was at the home of Caleb Williams in Grayton, sometime probably in the early 90s. Beautiful house with a great tree in front. I think they built it. It was a canonical hippie home. And I had the great pleasure of sojourning there occasionally with the Grayton gang, Marla Hofberg, Sutton Pierce, Emma Spillane, Damien Tidd, Ben Strevens, Willow Rosenthal, Sakina Bryant, and many others. Miles Pickering, my old best friend. So on their bookshelf, this house was black with spiders. There were spiders everywhere, like just cellar dweller webs all over, undisturbed cellar dweller webs everywhere. Sleeping in the bedroom was like an adventure in the spider kingdom, which is actually very profound because, unbeknownst to most humans, you dream differently depending on the organisms that are proximal to you. This is very important. You have cats or dogs, they're dreaming with you. For sure, not maybe. The proximity of other minds and organisms radically transforms the context and the nature, the capacities and the faculties of our minds and bodies. This is another homogenization. We live in boxes, they're dead inside. You try to get all the living things out, unless they are, your pets or your houseplants, and so forth. More bird walking. So in that house, in that time, I came across a very strange book to me, which I had never even heard anything about this topic before. And there were many books there, including Castaneda's books. Many is a relative term. They had a few small bookshelves. There was one in a sort of a closet area, and I don't know, 50, 60 books in the whole house, maybe 100, less. But I came across this one book, and the title intrigued me, so I picked it up, thank goodness. My God, what a mind-wrecking expose. And this is a book I very strongly recommend, among my very favorite books that I've ever encountered. Julian Jaynes's The Origins of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Now, Jaynes gets some things backwards and wrong. He's a pioneer, right? So pioneer is the first person in the terrain who's going to make mistakes. And they may try to plant the flag of their ego there, like Freud did with the subconscious and Jung in his own way. But we have to... I've heard lots of criticisms of Freud, many of them valuable, but I think we forget that, like, the first guy on the moon, so to speak, is going to get some stuff wrong, right? And they may even bind to their errors because they confuse their quest. Okay, what is going on here? Oh my goodness. It's combat between a yellow jacket and a spider. I will be back. Okay, so that was a moment, a very unusual moment in nature that I think was probably synchronistic in some ways, because I was talking about seeing something new for the first time, right? For example, the subconscious, or Lacan's view of the mind's anatomy and features. But what I saw, which I've never seen before, I saw this spinning thing come down out from the... And at first I thought the tree has dropped something. And it was just spinning around on the ground, and I quickly realized it was a yellow jacket. And then I could see that it had an insect, which I presumed was a spider because I know that wasps eat spiders. So I watched this bizarre spinning wrestling match, and then I filmed a little bit of it. And it turned out that what the wasp had somehow captured was not a spider at all. And I wonder at the incredible, what a spectacle this was, a very minute but profound spectacle. I wonder how it is that an ordinary housefly could successfully repulse this attack which it finally did. It somehow threw off the yellow jacket. And the yellow jacket was wandering around on the ground trying to find the housefly, which I could see standing on its legs. And then eventually the housefly flew off. Now, a yellow jacket has very powerful mandibles. And the housefly has, not none, but little in the way of defense. But somehow this housefly resisted the assault and went on to continue its very brief, in our terms, lifespan. So profound to see this. Never seen anything like that. I made a mistake, right? I saw something I'd never seen before, and I thought, oh, it's got a spider, because I know that wasps go after spiders, but yellow jackets, which are a form of wasp, Vespula, and often rather aggressive in our view, although I think we were very confused about the motives of insects, to put it mildly. They like meat, right? They like to get a corpus to chew on and digest. They don't have a digestive system inside their bodies, as I understand it. They have sort of an externalizable stomach, and this principle may become very important in later features of today's walk and talk. So I came across Julian Jaynes, and he was probably the first person I ever read, or one of the first people I ever read, that was speaking particularly about mind and its development over time. And his proposition, which I think he was quite convinced of, which he came to by the careful analysis of the Iliad and the Odyssey, was that over time, originally we did not have the concept of me, or I, or myself, and humans were like containers into which the gods put things. These hypostases, the thumos, the cardia, the ator, these were like aspects of our interiority that could be thought of a bit like living jars into which emotions and motivations and so forth were imposed by the gods and also by human authorities, and that we did not have memory like we have now. And as I understand it, and it's been quite a while since I've read this book, which I've read 6 or 7 times, I think. Apparently the Iliad and Odyssey were composed over a long period of time, and at a certain point in the story that he sees as in accord with a certain point in history, then you start seeing the first inklings of I, me, this sort of thing. Personal motives, personal concerns, personal memory. But the book is fascinating and brilliant, and it doesn't matter what he got wrong. He invented so much new terrain that I'm relatively unconcerned with if he got the hemispheric orientation backwards or something like this. Neuroscience was young in his day, and his familiarity with it was probably minimal. He started out as a biologist, and he was looking for evidence of something non-ordinary or intelligence in I think he was looking wrong, which is why he didn't find it. It's obvious. It's why he didn't find what he was looking for and shifted his focus. But so yeah, I become very interested in the history of the transformations and what we could think of as the developmental, the life phases of human minds, cognition, and awareness, understanding, thought. Bruno Snell's The Discovery of the Mind is another great book on this topic. Madness and Modernism by Sass is crucial and monumentally important in this genre is McGilchrist's The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World. The Matter with Things is a much more evidentiary argument that orbits the transformation from being, participation, and process into static deliverables, nouns, and the thingification of our minds and the world. So I found another book a couple days ago. I can't recall the author, but I've ordered it. And then it turns out that also Owen Barfield's Saving the Appearances belongs in this tiny library. I'm sure there's a vast trove of such books that I'm unaware of. But I came across a book that was inspired, I think, by Barfield and others that I've ordered. Can't recall the title or the author at this point. But it turns out that Hannah Arendt's The Life of the Mind, if I've got the title right, is also very similar, has a lot to do with this idea of, in the beginning at least, I'm just getting started in it, the differences between appearances, that which appears, and being, or, like which thing has precedence, and of course it depends on our concerns where we place precedence. Often in such discussions we will see people asking questions, well, which causes the other? And this is the concept of linear cause, right? Which I think, while useful in a limited and contingent scope of contexts, is very deceptive. And comes primarily from our capacity to engineer and build devices, right? Artifacts, artificial objects. In so many ways we are deceived by this, right? We keep transferring ontological suppositions from technology and engineering onto nature. Nature's not like this. This lens can be useful until and unless it dominates the terrain, in which case we become blind and idiotic because our expectation space is deformed, right? If you want to explore, you have to clear your expectation space to some degree, right? You have to forge a very open and multiply purposed and multiply perspectival orientation, and particularly we have problems with expectation space. What was I talking about last night that blew my mind? Something someone had said to me or I had read, and it blew my mind, not because it was ontology shattering. See, we need a word. This is the thing, our ontology structures our expectation space of what can and cannot be. I can't remember what I was talking about. Perhaps it'll come to me. And the expectation space guards against violations of it, as if there's a sentinel in consciousness that oversees these processes and says, like, up with this we will not put, in the words of Churchill. So it is our expectation space that largely delimits and confines and impedes, where it does not assist. You can have the expectation space that seeks anomalies, right? So you start out expecting anomalies. That can also be deceptive. There's no simple formula, though there are maxims, if you will. I probably can't enumerate some just now, and it's not my intent to do so because I have other features I want to explore here. But one of the, I read a little excerpt from the beginning of Arendt's book. It was circulating on Facebook, Facebrick, I call it. What a technologically efficient way to obliterate human relationships and intelligence and minds. That technology is. I'd love to see its opposite, and I have some models of what that might look like. In any case, this little excerpt I read, it was a few paragraphs, so intrigued me that I got her book. And in the beginning, she's exploring the differences between appearances and being. And she says that all of nature, there's no separate thing, and that observation and seeing and perceiving others is all this incredible dance of forms and semblances and appearances. And this is largely overlooked. We are told, no, the purpose of life is, reproduction, survival, blah, blah, blah. Not entirely untrue, but again, lethal if these perspectives dominate the sphere of perspectival orientation. And I was thinking, as I often do, I was just listening to Betty Hill recounting her contact experience with what she calls astronauts, not aliens. This is a much more useful conception. And I listen to a lot of people speak about encounters with the non-ordinary, and particularly with situations that we would associate with UFOs, UAP. Of course, UAP is a much broader designation because it's, unidentified, which is a hilarious tag, anomalous phenomena. That first word tells us a lot about the problem, right? Because the goal, if something obviously is unidentified, if that's the first word, then we can't identify with it, and it doesn't fit in our lexicons. And so the goal becomes to determine where it fits in our lexicons. Well, what if it doesn't? What if our lexicons, as I commonly declare, are broken? They've undergone waves of lossy compression into representations and tokens, tokenization, artifacting. And we don't know what it would be like to have a mind unencumbered by these losses. But we can rediscover this because our dreaming mind is very resistant to this. Yeah? It's almost the immune system to identification, evaluation, representation, so forth. The humans will never identify phenomena. Right? All they will do is produce a token from some category in their lexicon. They're broken, shot full with holes, category trees. And then, they will satisfy themselves, this fits here. But nothing fits there. What fits there are tokens, right? This is like the worst recording you could make of a piano concerto that was performed by a living being, with living beings, in a particular place and moment, and so forth. Our lexicons are fraught with this problem, and the older languages less so. I was recently listening to Dr. Lukatsky. I can't remember exactly who he was talking with. A couple of guys. They've interviewed him before. And he was saying very, very authoritatively, very declaratively, I can't find the word I want, that if you think UFOs are a thing you're going to solve by determining what their technology is, you are wrong. And what he said was that you'd have to include, if you really want to gain any capacity to understand the situation and the context and its features, I'm, paraphrasing, you're going to have to take the entire field of the paranormal into account and not start out with nuts and bolts. And this made me wonder, became very curious, because though I've been aware of this before, consciousness is strange. It formulates structures, and I like new structures. I like structures that draw my previous viewpoints and perspectives and suppositions and even my biases, the things that I have high confidence in, which sometimes are called beliefs. I'm not so big on that idea, although there are things I'm willing to admit belief in. I don't really find that word so useful, unless it is used to speak about matters of faith. But then we would say I have faith, not necessarily I believe. By the way, after my yesterday's recording on thinking, it suddenly occurred to me the strange onomatopoeia, right? I was drawing the concept of thinking into question, which Hannah Arendt is also doing quite brilliantly in the beginning of her book. And I noticed that the word is actually thin king, right? So it literally means like a razor blade authority, in a way. Not literally, figuratively. Onomatopoetically. Onomatopoetically. Actually, there's a different word for the phonemic, slightly schizoid analysis of English or other languages that gives precedence to the parts and their connotations and implications. Yeah, a thin king. If you listen to what experiencers and contactees and abductees and so forth, and by the way, Betty Hill said, they billed her as the first abductee, but she was quite resistant to this. She said, no, this was not an abduction. This was a colloquium. This was a discussion. This was a getting together. This was a meeting. And she said that she called out to them when they saw the phenomena in the sky. Notice I didn't call it a craft or a vehicle. She was waving, come here, who are you? We want to know you. So that's not an abduction. And she said that they were like humans. but differently. Their bodies were a little different, and they had big eyes, but not like the Greys. There seems to be a lot of information that implies that the, quote, Greys, unquote, are not actually organisms, right? They are constructs. They are like if it was possible to produce so, because we are trapped in this technological idea, we would think like robots. No, they're not robots. They are a form, a traveling form, that is somehow semi-biological, semi-transcendental, and is composed purposefully as an embodied vehicle for exploration, so that one or more beings can utilize this form to travel safely, to interact safely with the most dangerous thing in the universe, Homo sapiens. There's nothing that I know of, and I mean, this is terribly tragic, and it is not our nature to be this way. There's nothing that I know of that is as opposed to the existence of living worlds and organisms as our species at the group level is. It's unimaginable. There's nothing as shocking, like, beings from another universe are not as shocking as this, right? There's so many people that are worried, like, well, they're in our skies. You don't own the sky. The United States doesn't own the sky. We don't own the world. There's no such thing as owning a place. This is a fucking nonsense, deadly, stupid, bad, wrong, sinful idea. Own a place? No. You certainly don't own the sky. You don't own the oceans. You are owned by the sky. You are the sky's own, right? You are the world's own. You are the world worlding. You are the sky skying. You are the sun sunning, the moon mooning, Saturn saturning, time timing. There's all this, concern. Are they bad? Are they bad? They might hurt us. They could abduct us and like fuck us up and blah blah blah. They probably. So first of all, they is like, who knows, like 9,000 different things, but we could easily forge, a branching tree. You have psyops, religion, the military-industrial complex. You have spiritual phenomena, transcendental phenomena that are transcendental to any category we have. Then you have, travelers from other worlds, beings possibly who exist primarily in a non-physical dimension, physicalizing. But fundamentally what you have is one, right? One. And once you get to the human layer, there's a bunch of bullshit and danger and lying and fucking manipulation and military agendas and control agendas. There's nothing as dangerous as corporations around here. They kill millions a day. They get away scot-free. Everybody's worried about if somebody kills another human, you really want to punish them. But we don't punish the dead inside structures that destroy our planet and each other, our history and future, our children, our parents. Right? Those things just go on under their flag of, victorious domination of the world. The governments, the military-industrial prison complex, ideological thrips, structured processes that capture humans and deploy them for dire errands. Yeah. There's nothing as dangerous in the universe as that. Not around here. Right? Now certainly people who identify as abductees, many of them have had very traumatic experiences. But these do not really differ in kind from what happens to us every day here on Earth at the hands of dissociated, capitalistic and communistic and money-grubbing human cohorts, that are empty of humanity inside, on some kind of a bizarre anti-mission to, to parade around as the saviors, of human convenience and safety and health, while obliterating it at its roots in history and the environment and in the future. So, is it possible that there are malignant, non-ordinary, or non-terrestrial beings? Yes. Are there any around here that can be shown to be as dangerous as us? No. I'm sure they're at least as terrified of us as we are of them, especially because we are prone to go batshit out of our minds when we encounter something that doesn't fit into our expectation space. Yeah. It's not necessarily our ontologies that are violated, it's our expectations, right? It's the little book of what can and cannot be, which is a book of lies, primarily. Because the nature of nature is to import the impossible and physicalize it. So, you think things cannot be? Okay. Think there's no such thing as unicorns? Good for you. No Sasquatch? Yeah, you're wrong. Is it a purely physical phenomenon? Almost certainly not. Are there phenomena that can physicalize in a broad variety of ways or change their form? Yes, there are. The little book of what is impossible is a book of lies. This is just something we are scripted with. And we become identified with it so that if anything in the book of lies is violated, we feel it's violating me. Right? This is not a violation. This is liberation. Yeah? Anomaly liberates you from traps and cages in thought, conception, expectation, lexicons, common sense knowledge, the Book of Sposta by, Tony and Johnny Sposta from fucking Brooklyn, right? That's not supposed to happen. Most of the shit that's not supposed to happen is the shit that humans are doing. That's actually a violation of Spostaism, the Spostist foundations of reality. So, Lukatsky, who's been involved with the government over, decades, and is a scientist and a PhD, he said very blatantly that if you think this is a nuts and bolts thing, you're going to get nowhere. I remember hearing a piano teacher saying about Hannon, if you approach this from one finger at a time, you're going to get nowhere. Right? And this is a similar kind of problem. I'd like to suggest that, and this is the insight that occurred to me the other day, that what we call technology is a lesser stasis of X, something like formology, which all of nature is doing all the time, but the humans in their endless fascination with machines, they suppose that beings from other, from elsewhere, let's call it that, the unseen is what Lukatsky was pointing at, the whole domain of the unseen, the mysterious. But, the humans are inclined to suppose, and this is primarily due to, I think, the military's involvement and the government involvement and the corporations' involvement in the UFO UAP debacle. They think these are spaceships, and there are probably objects, but I'll bet those objects are hypostases of a transcendental nature, right? They are forms, not machines. Lots of evidence for this if you read deeply about the phenomena, encounters, think about what Lazar was doing. There is a technological aspect, but it is not a technology. I want you to imagine that X, which is the superposition of technology, and it is not fundamentally mechanical, right? It is fundamentally something we don't have a category for, that is transcendental to the concept of assembling a device from parts. Many of the reports of these things, they appear to have been somehow like invoked, right? They are of a single piece, as if they were forged by some kind of transcendental vibrational activity, right? That just causes matter to congeal into some desired form. Or causes X to congeal into matter in some desired form. So I want you to think about something far beyond the idea of technology. I think this is a crucially important concept. We just think, it's a machine. No, it's not a fucking machine. People who have encountered these things have said that they call it a vehicle or a craft, but they have said things like, it spoke to my mind. It spoke in my heart. Right? There are no machines that speak in your mind. I mean, let us hope not, please. This is not a mechanical phenomenon. Now, I'm not saying there are no branches of the phenomena that are not primarily mechanical. There probably are. There are probably both, right? You have this formological aspect in which you can probably compose the semblance or appearance of an object which is also a being, but it's not a machine. Right? It is that which machines are a lesser, condensed, missing many features, representation of. So Arendt was suggesting that we take appearances very seriously. There are no separate beings. All beings are being observed by other beings. Right? There's no unobserved being. And so it turns out that appearances might be very primordial, might have even precedence to survival. Forms could be primordial. And this is a very profound and beautiful idea, in my view, perspective. And then I was thinking, think about the differences between inside and outside. Okay, we're gonna go very simple here, but very profound. Yeah. So if you just remove, and please don't try this. If we imagine removing the skin of a human, and let's say that we're in some special situation where the skin can be removed and the human will not be harmed, and we can look at the first layer, and the human is fine. In fact, maybe they are enjoying this because it's exciting for them and there's no pain. And we have the capacity to just put the skin right back, or even heal the skin in all kinds of ways and make it better and then put it back on, right? Let's imagine something beautiful, not just horrific. Yeah, take the skin off. What do you see? This is very different from what you were expecting, right? The surface of our bodies and the surfaces of nature belie their interiority quite dramatically. Yeah. And the surface of the mind and of thought and thinking, of lexicons and categories, belies their anatomy, their interiority, very dramatically. And then I thought, I was suddenly surprised by this. I thought, just think, let's go further, right? Open up the person, and let's suppose that we can keep everything connected and healthy and happy, and maybe even heal it and so forth. We take out all the organs, and we let the organs speak to the person. We hear the voice of their heart. We hear the voice of their pancreas, the voice of their lungs, the voice of their liver, their kidneys, their intestines, their colon, the voice of their reproductive organs, the voice of the spine, their bones, right? If you were to encounter the voices of your organs, if they could speak, or telepathically communicate with you, which is, like mind to mind is what I mean. Mind share with you, not telepathy. Because telepathy isn't, as we imagine, a transmission tech. It's not, I send a signal to your mind and you receive it and then decode it. Though there may be things like that too. It starts with unity. Right? It's simultaneous. It's instantaneous, in my view, in my experience. People I was walking by, the man was saying, sci-fi masterpiece. Oh, yep, that's nature. So, we have all these ideas and expectations, most of them are wrong, where they are severely wrong or where we are missing core features, core ideas and perspectives. We are blind, right? We will see wrong every time we look. But I thought then, what if the organs of time-space herself, and I usually couple her with another feature that I call the dweller in the between, very positively in both cases, very reverently. What if the organs of time-space could take on forms and come and speak to us, right? And inquire into our motivations and situation and bodies and, yeah. What if some branch of the UFO UAP phenomena is transcendental in this way? The heart of time-space comes and says to humans, why are you killing everything? You're tearing we are one body, you and me, us, right? We are one body. Why are you attacking your own body? What is wrong with you? What went wrong with you? How could something go this wrong? And one of my perspectives on this is that there is a kind of a, it's not exactly a radio station, it's a pulsed array, pulsed manifold of wavelengths that orient physical beings, and in some situations those signals can break down, and when they get lost you get worlds like this one. Actually not worlds like this one, species like ours, in our present form and situation, in our developmental arc, hoping we have a future to that arc, and all the living beings of our world have a future, although it looks rather grim at the moment. Presuming that nothing intervenes. I think things will intervene, right? And UFOs and UAP are interventions. So I thought, what if the heart or the mind or the lungs of time-space came, forged a way to reach into our layer in forms that we could at least conceive of, and would look somewhat familiar to us, to inquire, right, to research the problem here, maybe to restore the network connectivity in the humans to the library of the signals that orient intelligent beings throughout time-space. And, some of these beings are doctors and some of them are network engineers, so to speak, right? They would resemble these categories. Others of them are multi-categorical. They don't have any simple, specific identity, and this is why identifying the phenomena is the wrong idea, right? We haven't properly identified any phenomena. All we have are tokens, right? That's a tree. This is a dog. And we seem to think that once we have a token for it, we know, quote, what it is. That's impossible. What it is a manifold of possibility spaces that that are transformed by us and that we are transformed by. And the nature of the relationship is what transforms us, and if that relationship is primarily representational, the relationships die. They are evicted. So this is a terrifying problem in the interiority and present developmental phase of our species. which is a vast topology with wild exceptions to my concerns all over it, but they're small compared to the dominating features of our situation here. Oh yeah, this other thing. What if, there's a bunch of, like on Reddit and stuff, there's a bunch of prison planet, like this is a prison planet, ideas. And they're not without some useful features. This is not my experience or supposition, but I think it's useful to entertain that perspective. And I was thinking about, the whole problem of abduction. And in my recent video on this topic, I talked about being abducted by capitalism. But what if the nature of the physical universe is primarily the nature of abduction? Were we not abducted into physical bodies? Or what if everything what if abduction is a holophore? Right? Don't you not abduct creatures and beings and eat them and stuff? Right? Isn't shopping a kind of abduction? Aren't you being abducted by the corporations that make the things you buy? And are you not abducting the things they buy? Right? What if everything is abduction? I'm not saying it is, I'm saying, but let's imagine that this principle is a core principle of the physical layer of that which is and they who are. Do you not abduct oxygen for your bloodstream? Right? Did we not abduct trees and make them into houses and paper and books and things? Don't we abduct electromagnetic forces and build, metals? And isn't everything kind of abduction? Right? It's like, that's bad abducting being. No, the humans are abducting you. Right? In 10,000 new ways per second. If you're really worried about abduction, you should be worried about capitalism and commerce and war, intentional deprivation of humans by dead inside human cohorts. There's no abduction more terrifying than that, more pervasive, more invisible, more subtle, and at the same time superficially obvious than this. What actually causes fear is the violation of our expectation space, right? So if our expectation space is very open, there's no fear. Yeah? If you trust in the nature of being and origin in the universe, you are pretty much, if you deeply trust in this, you are immune to fear. This is part of the lineage of Enlightenment traditions and the being of no status, right? If you have no status, nothing to defend. And if you have nothing to defend, what could possibly threaten you? So think about the really weird difference, right? Between the surfaces of beings and their interiors. This is non-ordinarily weird. This is shockingly weird. Right? Unless you're a surgeon or an anatomist or a forensic coroner or something, right? And you don't regularly see the insides of beings, this would absolutely violate your expectation space and the entire system of lies on which knowledge is largely founded. Right? Organs are fucking weird. They are nothing like the smooth, attractive, dry, surface. Bad machine noise. I apologize. Here, maybe I can pause for a second. Sorry about this. So think very deeply for a moment about the difference between what you think of as yourself, right, which is probably your surface, yeah, and your interior, your organs. All of the unimaginably sophisticated, not technological, right, formological aspects of your being. and how each one hides the other, right? The surface hides the interior, and the interior hides the surface. Right? Each one obscures the other. And if you want to understand anomalous phenomena, I think this pivot is crucially important to entertain in your perspectival orientation and your imaginings and your suppositions. Right? Suppose that at least some branches of the UFO phenomena, I think the unidentified thing is hilarious. It's like, you're really pissed off. We haven't identified this yet. Yeah, it could be a threat. No, you're a threat. Right? That perspective is a threat. You're not trying to relate. You're trying to, what? Evaluate, to analyze. I don't want to be in relation with people who are analyzing me. Yeah? That's not a relationship. That's domination. So yeah, imagine these differences, and I get this, I'm crediting Hannah because she is speaking about this in a deep and insightful way in the beginning of the book that I'm reading. And this is what led me to wonder in this way. So again, suppose that the interiority of time-space and form and being and origin, it wants to travel to the exteriority, to the surface where there's a problem, and inquire into that problem, and perhaps resolve, right, to remediate this problem, which we are inclined to think that what we do on Earth stays on Earth. There's no chance of that being true. The universe is not, there's nothing in nature that is like this. Right? So what we do here, we detonate a bomb here, we're causing a problem everywhere. It's not, yes, there's a local, aspect of the situation that is extremely dire, but we know so little about the nature of being and they who are that which is, that we are, this species is one of the most dangerous things that ever possibly arose. And we're dangerous because we're dissociated. And we're dissociated because we like to build things, right? And I myself, have served technology most of my life. And I have made terrible relational mistakes while in pursuit of some absurd agenda that has compelled or fascinated me. Terrible. Almost always unconsciously. Right? It was ignorance rather than evil, I think, though these two tokens have deep resemblance to one another and deep complex co-emergence aspects. So yeah, if the humans think like the UFOs are technological, they're looking at the wrong branch. And they're looking at the branch that fascinates them, and that they're very concerned with because they want to make more weapons, right? And I've said this many times, the one thing you must definitely not allow the humans to obtain is anything resembling free energy. There's a bunch of people who are like, the government has, these devices that could produce endless energy out of, the vacuum or whatever, right? You bet nothing in the universe would want the humans to get a hold of that. Our planet wouldn't survive 6 months of that. Yeah, the pollution is terrifying, but the problem isn't that the problem was never scarcity, right? The problem is the subjugation of the planet and the people to war and commerce and capitalism and ideologies and this kind of crap. This is a deadly problem. What the humans must do is forge actually intelligent societies that know what never to build, what never to do, right? We have to dismantle Monsanto and Bayer and Lockheed and all of these corporations, Google, Facebook, that are fracking the history and future of humanity and the world, poisoning the environment. We must forge intelligent societies, and until and unless we do, the humans had better not get anything resembling free energy. Nothing would survive that. Whatever has captured the humans is a weaponeering and weaponizing force. It's highly colonizing, and it's dead inside. It's not. You could think of it as a being if you want, but it's more like the opposite of a being. So these are some of the things that have fascinated me over the past span since my last recording. So grateful to have this time to explore them together, and for your interest and curiosity and insight, and to all of you who support my work in whatever way you do, whether that's by listening, criticizing, giving me donations, which I receive very few of, though I do have a couple of supporters and a few people who occasionally make a small donation, and I'm deeply grateful for that. Not so much for the money, certainly not in this for the money. I'm no kind of a grifter. If I was in this for the money, see, I probably made what? I don't know, less than $5 or $6 per video if we took the whole of my video. I have like 500 videos. And by the way, I encourage you to look in, if you like these recordings, don't just listen to the new ones, right? Delve into the history. There's some crazy, amazing stuff in there, and there's recordings from when I was much more inspired and courageous than I am these days. But yes, thank you to all of you who participate in the spirit of anamnesis, unforgetting, and insight, virtue, love, and the restoration of our humanity and our more than merely human nature. I wish you beauty, health, well-being, insight, amazing dreams, liberation, and the fulfillment of the promise of your human incarnation. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to learning together again very soon. Bye-bye for now.